Thank you so much, and welcome everybody to tonight's Beyond the X-Ray. We're going to talk about how AI is redefining dental diagnosis and patient trust. I'm joined tonight by Dr. Lily, who is an AI clinical expert with our friends at Vidya Health, and also by the great Kuzan, who is the VP of great. Dr. Lily, would you please introduce yourself for just a minute to the group?
Sure. Hi, I'm Dr. Nandita Lilly. I'm one of the clinical experts at Vidya Health, where I help drive the clinical innovation through AI powered solutions. My background includes hospital dentistry, community health clinics, corporate dentistry, and private practice ownership. That perspective gives me a well rounded opinion.
Thank you. We're excited to have you join us tonight. And Kuzan Scrivala, would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. Kuzan Srivala. I'm the VP of IT at GLDP, and I've been in the industry for about 25 years. This is my first stint into healthcare, and I've gone from doing your traditional IT networking server stuff to actually taking a little bit of a detour and playing around with some really interesting, cool technology that I'm hoping we're going to talk about. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And we love having folks that embrace the new technology, especially around AI and imaging and all of the great stuff that's happening in the world of dentistry today. I am April Lowry, and I am the Executive Director and GM of Clinical and AI Solutions at Henry Schein One. And so I run all of our global clinical and AI solutions, including AI imaging, as well as other AI related products for our global PMSs like Dentrix and Ascend and Dentally across the UK and Europe. And tonight we're going to talk about how AI supported diagnostics is not just the future of dentistry, but it's become the new standard of care. So today's conversation is about how AI bridges the gap between clinical expertise and patient understanding. Nearly half of treatment recommendations are delayed or declined, and that's not a clinical problem, that's a communication problem. So, AI gives us a pathway to solve both, and we're here to talk about how AI turns that detection into acceptance and acceptance into healthier patient outcomes, which is what we all want. So, let's talk a little bit about our learning objectives for tonight. So, first, we want to talk about how AI identifies and illustrates pathology with clarity. That's one of the great things about having somebody with Dr. Lily's caliber on the meeting. So she's going to be able to give us some insights into how this all works and what the mystery is behind it. Secondly, we're going to talk about communication techniques using AI visuals. And I know that this is something that Kuzan and his team have become very diligent in doing at Great Lakes and something that they can give us a lot of insight into. And then number three, we're going to talk about documentation and workflow alignment from detection to acceptance. Because as great as our AI tools are for diagnostic imaging, they only work if you use them and implement them into your clinical digital workflows. So, getting those pieces into your operations, getting your team trained, getting them using the products and using them in their clinical diagnostic workflows is a big part of the change management that you have to deal with as you look at deciding on these tools. Um, in terms of the next steps, we're going to talk a little bit about, looking back as we move ahead. So we want to talk about what AI is. And in the simplest form, it's artificial intelligence. And AI, and I heard this joke in a meeting last week, they said that we all know how to spell it. So it's one of those things that doesn't have to be complicated. It's simple. We all already know how to spell AI. And the computers or the agents will perform tasks for us that are typically done by people, such as processing language, reading images. But what I think a lot of people don't know and understand that I talk about a lot with our customers is that AI has been around since the 1950s. And so AI takes all of the inputs we give it, and then creates outputs. A lot of us have gotten used to things like Meta and Gemini and Alexa in our homes and on our phones in our pocket. And so now we're going to talk about some of the tools and how they help elevate the standard of care. We work a lot with our partners at Vidya to help improve productivity, drive treatment planning, and use those AIs to do things. And so it becomes a part of that modern dentistry clinical workflow to use AI in different parts of those things. And I know, Kuzan, you mentioned earlier that AI has been a big part of your journey in dentistry and technology that you embrace in general. Can you tell us a little about how you've come to embrace AI in recent times?
Yeah, so I think our journey started like most DSOs. We had a traditional EMR. It was hosted on premise. We have about 27, 28 clinics around the Illinois and Indiana area, Great Lakes. So give you a clue of kind of where we are. I think the journey into AI, before I kind of get started that, I have to preface this by saying, so we migrated from our on-premise EMR to Gentrix Ascend, which is obviously your SaaS offering. And I think that's really what started the journey for us because through that SaaS offering, we were presented a lot of technologies that probably would have been otherwise we would have been unaware or probably intimidated. I mean, the challenges we had with an on-premise EMR was a lot of stuff was just bolt on. It was a lot of management, a lot of maintenance, a lot of overhead. And it's really hard for an organization that's sort of healthcare focused and not technology focused to kind of justify that expense and have a deep bench to be able to maintain it. So being able to switch over to SaaS took a lot of that load and burden off of us so we could focus on the things that we do best. Then we were able to kind of play around with the AI tool offerings inside of Ascend, Vidya being one of them. I think inside of Ascend is called Detect AI, which is essentially the AI layer that sits on top of the radiograph, right? And we've seen a lot of benefits by it. I think it bridges the gaps between our seasoned doctors and those that are just coming out. It's a very useful education tool. The other thing I think really helps is doctors, operate at a certain pace and things are very, very obvious to them. I've sat in the dentist chair and I've had a doctor point at my x-ray and be like, well, you see here, this is a cavity. And I have no idea what he's talking about when he's looking at it. But with now with the AI tools and the way it highlights it, it sort of bridges that communication, right? So even though a doctor's pointing at something that you previously probably wouldn't have known, with the AI layer on top of it, it's kind of highlighting these hotspots in these areas, which is really, really cool for, I think, as a patient sitting in the chair, because you actually can understand what the doctor's talking about. The other neat part, and I think we've only scratched the surface of this as far as technology goes, is the ability to start forecasting, right? And doing predictions. Because AI, I mean, you talked about it being around since the 1950s, but I mean, it's grown and it's evolved, but it consumes vast amounts of data, right? And I think it's more than anything else, it's the speed at which it does all of its operations. So it's consuming billions and billions of images. It's comparing those images against each other. And so when you sit in the chair and when your x-ray gets taken, it looks as yours and it compares it to the myriad of x-rays that it's had before it, and it's able to say what your, mouth health journey is going to look like well before it actually transpires, which I think is probably one of the most, geeky things for me. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Because I mean, I'll pause there because I can keep going for a while.
No, thank you. And I do like that you said that you guys get focused on the healthcare and not the technology. And so that having these tools enables you to truly focus on the patient outcomes and the patients themselves versus, having to log into multiple systems and having to be, figure out the software side of things. What is your password today? So those are the kinds of things that we see benefiting those healthcare outcomes like you talked about and being healthcare focused.
Yeah,
Um,
the word we use a lot at GLDP is single pane of glass. Like that is the one
I
thing that
love
has
that.
become very, very synonymous with Ascend. But that's the part that we love about it. It's that single pane of glass. We log into Ascend and then everything is there for us inside of it, whether it's Video Health, Detect AI, whether it's Voice Perio, whatever. Again, there's 1,000 other tools, but we're in one system and we log in once and then we're done.
Yeah, and that's one of the beauties of that kind of platform. And Dr. Lilly, I don't want to skip over you on this question because you're one of the few people that I've met that knows a lot about what's under the hood of AI. So give us just a little insight about what goes on in terms of how AI works, especially AI for diagnostics. Can you give us like our kind of 30-second elevator pitch on how that works as for the lay people in the room?
Sure. So basically, the AI model uses data, wide range of clinically diverse data, and then it, is able to see multiple different aspects of the radiograph. We as dentists, we're very singled out. We only look at certain areas, but the AI is able to have like a consistent approach to viewing the X-ray. They don't have to worry about tired eyes. They can see, many images and still have fresh set of eyes. And it's really been a game changer as far as patient education and being able to highlight the AI findings.
No, and that's a perfect segue into what we're going to talk about next. And I think you're absolutely right because what we're seeing is that AI is no longer experimental. And just like everybody else in the country, all of our customers that we talk to, I'm out in offices every single month around the country, and we see the staffing shortages. We hear about the rising overheads. We hear about that constant challenge of reimbursement. And I think that, with our clinicians and customers being short on time, having to get patients over that treatment acceptance piece, helping them understand why, things like a root canal or a crown might be needed. We're able to kind of look at how AI can fill some of those tasks and roles in the practice, with 60% of dentists reporting burnout, with administration pieces of that being a high contributor. I talk to a lot of doctors who are having to do their notes at home, when they can log in from home, or they're having to come in early before the office starts and extending their work days. 59% of patients are more likely to accept treatment if AI detects something, as well. So I think that being able to use those, and layering that AI into your existing systems will help reduce the manual work, speed up the reimbursement, and help your operations scale. And I think Dr. Lilly hit the nail on the head in terms of that treatment acceptance piece. I think that's sort of the gold standard that we see with increases around our customers and the rise in treatment case acceptance once they implement AI diagnostic. Because, and I say this all the time, that AI is for the patient more than the dentist. Yes, it helps, it provides education, but it's really to help the patient see, as Dr. Lilly rightly pointed out. It's easier for me to see that there's an infection in the apex of the root if I see it, colored in purple or red on the image in front of me. It makes it easier to explain. And we're going to talk a little bit about why case acceptance matters now. Because one of the things that we talk about a lot is AI doesn't replace the clinical eye, it just amplifies it. So these are tools to help you grow your practice and to help the patients understand. And I do like how Dr. Lilly talked about the AI's eyes never get tired. And I put my glasses on because it's 8:44 at night here, and I've been looking at computers all day, and so my eyes were starting to get tired, and I wanted to make sure I could see the screen. So I totally get exactly what she said. But Kuzan, I know you guys have done a lot of work around case acceptance. So talk to us a little bit about some of the things you've seen at Great Lakes, with using AI diagnostics in your offices.
I think the best feature and the most like well received feature that we've seen, believe it or not, is something as simple as a QR code, right? So when the doctors are they take the X-rays and video AI that's detect AI that sits on top of it, diagnoses. There is the ability for and like most patients, right? They're like, I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna check it out, I'm gonna check my balance, my bank balance, I'm gonna talk to the partner, I'm gonna figure it out. Traditionally, I mean, they kind of leave the office and they have to recall the conversation that they had with the doctor. But like one of the neatest features, and I think one of the most well received, is there's this little QR code. They scan it with their phones while they're sitting in the chair, and it gives them an entire history and their X-rays and the images of their X-rays that they took while they were sitting in the chair on their phones. And now they have it with them and they can go home, they can percolate on it and they can come back. And more often than not, we find that when they have a calm minute to sit down and read through it, because it also comes with a lot of education material, like, okay, if we're first suggesting a root canal, what is a root canal? What does it entail? What does it cost? And those kinds of things tend to help, like, when you're in the dentist chair, you don't want to feel the pressure. Like, it's not a sales pitch. This is your health. You take it seriously. And so we found that to be like one of the best, well received parts of this solution. The other thing, and I think you touched a lot about it, is bridging that communication gap. And I just wanted to add one thing, at least for a multi-site DSO like ours. The other thing that AI does is it offers a certain layer of consistency, because what we are able to do is say, if you go to our associates for dental clinic, or whether you go to Valparaiso or Fairview or any one of our clinics, you're going to get the same level and caliber of treatment. And the way we are able to guarantee that is through that layer of AI, right? Because we're saying that no matter whether we have a seasoned 10-year doctor that's been there for 50 years and it's his practice, or somebody that just graduated medical school, we're guaranteeing you a certain level because we're able to your point, detect things and there's consistency. Now, the seasoned, well-trained 10-year doctors may rely on it slightly less, but it's there nonetheless.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point. I think it's a lot of times when we're working with clinicians in the field that are using the diagnostic AI tools, it's more about having that consistency and having that kind of confirmation that what they were seeing is also the same. We also coach a lot of hygienists to use it to make sure that it's matching some of their bone loss and pocket depths that they're picking up. And so I think that kind of educational tool and consistency is a very important aspect of how it is impacting dentistry today with the using the AI diagnostics. And we talk a lot about how patients are hesitant to agree to treatments today. Industry reimbursement rates are flat. So anything that we can do to help kind of boost the confidence with better tools and education, I think helps all of us. And I know, Dr. Lilly, we talked a little bit about this earlier, but this thing, it shocked me when I read this in here today that 1 in 4 adults still has untreated dental decay. And kind of addressing this early is key to reducing the burden on oral diseases. And I'd like to just kind of get your insights on kind of just the mouth being the opening of our healthcare, a big part of our healthcare, and then what does it mean when we have all of this untreated dental decay to our overall health today?
Right. So unfortunately, there's several factors that play into why 1 in 4 adults have untreated dental decay. Everyone's feeling the pressure of rising costs, financial concerns, things like that. And I think the nice thing about AI is it's more about early detection. It's AI is able to detect subtle grayscale differences at the pixel level, and it's often invisible to the human eye. So what could be a very pricey, even a filling could be very expensive. But if we're able to detect it early, we could apply some Curodont on it, recommend fluoride treatment, things early stages that aren't going to end up in a root canal or an implant in a crown or full mouth restoration.
Well, and I think that's a great point because one of the things that the diagnostic AI does very well in the offices that we've worked with is catch those incipient caries that are oftentimes harder to spot inside your normal traditional 2D x-rays. And so you're absolutely right. Being able to apply something like Curodont to those incipient caries, being able to catch them early and perhaps, completely reverse what could become a big problem later on in a very affordable way is something that I think we're starting to see. A lot of early treatment get caught and addressed because of that with the AI diagnostics. And that's something that I think will continue to benefit and grow the industry because being able to catch more of these early detections, it allows you to save more teeth. It allows you to develop that rapport and trust with your patient because you're helping educate them on something to stop before it gets into a situation to where it becomes much more painful and much more expensive. Let's talk a little bit about what diagnostics AI actually does. And here we're going to talk a little bit about how AI will highlight the caries, the calculus, your bone levels, all of the different things that it points out to us in terms of what our clinician view and in the patient view. And that's kind of where the magic happens. Dr. Lilly, can you kind of walk us through how you ensure, AI outputs are accurate and trustworthy, and some of the work that you've done in your expertise to kind of help us, be confident in the AI findings and what we're actually seeing on the screen?
Sure. Well, I first like to examine the x-rays without the AI filter on. And then I like to use the AI findings to help decide, like a second set of eyes, just another tool in my tool belt. Um, but basically, the AI findings, it highlights suspicious areas on the image, and it kind of helps, like I said, second set of eyes, those slight subtle differences in grayscale, AI will pick up, and then it'll help me take a second look. And it kind of also helps standardize our practice. So we have standardization across the clinicians, which also really helps with improved consistency and efficiency because the dental assistants know what to expect. It's kind of all works along the same lines.
And a lot of our products that we work with in AI, especially on the diagnostic side, require FDA clearances. You're making sure that we're protecting their clinical and safety issues, and how that kind of translates into the piece. And we talk a little bit about detection versus overdiagnosis. And so when we're talking about those two things, Dr. Lilly, like where's that line between detection and overdiagnosis? Do you feel like the AI helps you be diagnostically more accurate? Or do you feel like it tends to go, more or less too much?
So I feel that overdiagnosing and underdiagnosing are equally damaging, right? Um, we are not taking, at the end of the line, the buck stops at the dentist. So ultimately, we have to use our human intelligence along with the artificial intelligence to interpret these findings. We also have to take in things like the clinical exam, the patient's symptoms, put all of these things together to come up with a diagnosis. And it is very important to use an FDA cleared dental AI model because, it meets the federal standards for safety, accuracy, and reliability. And it also affords the clinician some legal support, right? Because it's FDA cleared. Another thing about that is, with FDA approval, we have an added layer of confidence that the patient will be able to see with us because we're FDA approved.
Yeah, no, and I think that's very important that, these things, as AI diagnostic class 2 medical devices, they are highly regulated, and they do require FDA clearance to be used. And so you want to make sure that as you're using and selecting AI diagnostic tools, that you're clear on what FDA approvals they have. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more later too as well. Kuzan, what about, from the patient perspective, what do you hear back from your offices in terms of how the patients respond when they first see an AI enhanced image for the first time?
I mean, honestly, I don't think people go into the dentist expecting there to be, AI technology. And so to them, I don't think, and that's part of the beauty of it, right? I don't think there's this vast technological hurdle that they need to get their minds around, and it's very seamlessly integrated. And I think that's the real charm of a good implementation, is that you can't tell the difference, right, between AI and just your regular EMR or your regular software that's there for dentistry. And so I think the most flattering thing that we can say is that they don't always know that there's AI involved, and I think the only real, and again, there's many different types of AI. I know we're focusing heavily on the video part of it, but there are other facets to it. We use voice perio, for example, as well. I think that's probably a little bit more receptive to the patient, because the traditional way of doing perio is to, the hygienist will, if you've ever had it done, they're doing 334, 334, whatever. They're going through the numbers, and they're typically doing that in their mind, and then they're, moving off to the side and writing on a chart. But with voice perio, they're saying it out loud. And when they hit those high numbers, and again, I've experienced this firsthand, when they hit those high numbers, the patient is hearing, they're like, oh. And then when you have AI kind of spitting out a treatment plan, lickety split, they're seeing the benefits and the integration, again, relatively seamless, right? And so I don't think most patients even are kind of making that correlation. I think that's the beauty of it in my mind. They're not registering that it's AI. And I kind of like that.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great point, and one that makes sense because, and in today's world, we've become so used to technology, like you said, it's probably not as big of a surprise as you might think, and it's helping aid. So when it's seamless like that, it just fits into the overall process. One thing though that you highlighted that kind of leads into our next piece when you're talking about the voice perio charting and calling out the high numbers. And so today, one of our fun facts is that 47% of patients delay or decline treatment due to lack of understanding. So that simple method of calling out the numbers and then recognizing that all of a sudden there's a high one, or seeing those AI diagnostic images in color and noticing where the decay is, noticing where the infection might be. I think those are things that make it easier for patients to understand. And something that we're going to continue to talk more about. And we want to, help get better at helping the patients understand their issues, helping the patients understand and address the concerns, and build trust so that they will say yes to treatment. One way is to teach them to see what you see as clinicians on the x-ray. People love to learn, including our patients. And so on the left-hand side of the screen, you see kind of the clinician's view of the x-ray. And then on the right-hand side of the screen, we're showing our patient view. Dr. Lilly, can you just walk us through what we're seeing here and like how would you teach the patient on kind of what they're seeing in this AI enhanced image?
Sure. So initially, as a clinician, I would try to use as many hand gestures as I could to explain this black and white grayscale image to my patient. They never had any idea what I was saying. And a lot of times I think they thought I was making it all up. But now with the patient view, I have different colors, different, even like a dotted line, things like that. So let's go through it. So the first molar on the top, the maxillary number 3, that is highlighting a restoration imperfection with the dotted lines. Right above that, those green dotted lines are highlighting the radiographic bone level values. So moving forward to tooth number 4, the maxillary second premolar, that's showing caries on the mesial and proximal surface. And it's a kissing cavity, so it's also on the distal of tooth number 5. And then similarly, we can see on the lower that there's a large carious lesion on tooth number 31, that large red lesion there, and it's encroaching the nerve. So, I mean, it's so much easier to explain to a patient. It's night and day. Before, I was just making all kinds of gestures, saying it's a big cavity and it's close to the nerve, and this is just really simplified and patient education. And this is what sells the treatment plan. I don't have to sell anything anymore. I just have to show them and they can see it to believe it.
Yeah, and I think that's the important part of where this comes into play, whether the AI is, part of the voice or part of the diagnostics, but you're actually able to clearly educate the patient. It's easier to see, where the tooth roots are, easier to see the different parts of the teeth. And so it does make that much more clear. And you did a great job explaining that to those of us in the room that aren't doctors. Thank you. Let's take a quick poll. Let's see. How much chairside time do you typically spend explaining radiographic findings to patients? So your choices are less than 2 minutes, 2 to 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, or more than 10 minutes. So everybody can answer and put in their poll answer. So this is how much time this group is spending. on average. So it looks like the majority is around 2 to 5 minutes. So that's a pretty overwhelming majority. A small percentage going, greater than 10 minutes. And so not too much surprises here, but I think it's great to see so much consistency with how much time we're spending explaining those images. So let's talk about how our industry is leveraging AI and what all is available to you today. So, on the previous screen, Dr. Lilly did a great job helping us see the power of AI analysis on the x-rays as the technology for prevention to help with patient education. Oftentimes that, x-ray analysis offers hygienists and dentists like a clear, user-friendly interface for the patient piece and the clinical piece. You can show this in real time, making the dental conditions easier for the patients to understand, and really help educate the patients about their oral health. It really does bridge the gap between the dentist's expertise and the patient's understanding to kind of make things a lot simpler and I think it just makes those conversations, easier to be had. And there is a big focus as well for prioritizing children's oral health and being able to work with children over 3 years of age or older and to help spot those incipient carious lesions that we mentioned earlier, and using that AI to spot those early detectives. Dr. Lil, early detections. So, Dr. Lilly, what does it mean to kind of spot treatment early on before it turns into the need for a root canal or an abscess and some of those things? Like, what does it really mean for the health of your teeth over your life?
So we all know that once you do a filling, you'll have to replace that filling. And it's just this vicious cycle. Nothing's as good as your natural teeth. And so if we're able to have less invasive treatment, it's better for your long-term longevity of your teeth. So if we can catch early detections that the AI model can see that the human eye cannot detect, we can do treatment modalities like silver diamine fluoride, periodont, even fluoride treatments, and things like that. And again, that will help address the 1 in 4 adults have active caries in their mouth. All of these things play in part together.
Yeah, no, that's a great call out, and I think a good way of how the tools are working together to do this. In terms of implementing AI diagnostics, Kuzan, what are some of the things that you guys tackle from a change management perspective to really get the adoption of your hygienists and clinicians? And what did you do to kind of drive that adoption to make it easier for the other practice leaders on the line and operations leaders that might be wondering how they would implement something like this?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I think I just want to preface my answer by saying this is not a one and done. It's something that we are doing constantly. I think that the most important thing for us to be able to train and to give guidance to our clinicians is to have the data, like the actual. So I think with Vidya, I think if we're talking about it specifically, which is the product that we use, we have the reporting arm of that, which is called Insights, that can actually show us who is using it, who isn't using it, how much they're using it, what did AI recommend versus what did the clinician actually end up doing. And that's not always just about pure revenue, right? That again, it's very much a teaching, learning tool for us. And so with that information, we can see very apparent gaps of people who are just not using it, and then we can go specifically to those clinicians and say, what is it? What is it about this that you don't like, and what can we do to address it? And that's how we see usage improving. We have somebody that's dedicated, and I'm not sure if this is typical in the DSO field, but at GLDP, we have a VP of doctor education. Leanne is specifically dedicated towards the doctors, and Sarah is our VP of hygiene, and she is specifically dedicated for the hygienist. And they spend a lot of time going over the data points and those reports. And wherever they see a gap, they can address it, whether it's a group of them or singling people out and saying, what is it that you don't like? What is it that's not working? Why are your patients not reacting the way we see the rest of our organization? So I think data is really what it comes down to. having the right data.
Yeah. No, I love that you said it's not one and done because I do completely value that and support that because what we see in the world of clinical and AI over at Henry Schein One is that the more often our customers are using the diagnostic and AI tools, and the more they're following up, the more they're tracking the data, the more they're looking at the insights in the daily dashboards, the more that they're examining their usage and how it's impacting those outcomes. And I tell practices all the time when they're getting ready to implement this, like start with the end in mind. What do you know? What outcomes do you want to get out of this? Whether it's a diagnostic AI tool, a voice notes AI, a perio charting, whatever those AI tools are that you're trying to operate, choose from the beginning what you want your outcomes to be for your practice or organization, and measure those. Figure out how you're going to measure those. Figure out how you're going to track usage. Pick a partner that supplies you with that data, and keep doing that. So whether it's not just about the go live week or the go live month, you want to continue to manage that and make sure that those tools are benefiting your organization and that they're being used and used correctly on an ongoing basis, because that's where you really see the impact over time. Is you start seeing how you can catch those early detections, you start seeing the increase in treatment acceptance, you start seeing the confidence of the younger associates as they're learning and being educated in that continuous training cycle. So those are all great best practices to share with our audience in this space.
Just if I may, I just want to add the sort of technical perspective because we're spending. I mean, a lot of people have their medical perspective. It's when we talk about training and this ongoing consistent approach to it. The other thing that we have to kind of highlight is, again, we've gone from this on-premise static environment that used to be relatively very hard to upgrade, very cumbersome to go through iterations, to an environment which is now completely SaaS. But a lot of these SaaS environments have these massive development teams that believe in really quick sprints. And so what we are seeing as consumers is that in a matter of weeks, 3, 4, 5 weeks, the UI changes, the UX changes, and if we are not on top of it from a technology perspective, our clinicians will get left behind, right? Because they're creatures of habit. People are going to come in, they're going to do what they're comfortable with doing, what they were taught doing when we went, when the go live launch happened. But if we're not constantly there, keeping in lockstep and sync with the development, and that's why I think you hit the nail on the head. You have to have the right partner, because without that, you're going to get left behind, right? They're going to keep developing and they're going to keep advancing, and you're going to be like, oh, what just happened? Everything just changed, and there are all these new buttons, and what do they do? And I don't even know, right? And so it's a constant process, and I make it sound more laborious than it is, but I'm always surprised at the eagerness. I mean, they're hungry. I mean, obviously, doctors and hygienists are extremely intelligent people, and they love this technology, right? Because traditionally, I feel in the entire healthcare ecosystem, dentistry has always been kind of forgotten about. Like you have your Epics and you have your all cool snazzy technologies for CAT scans and this and that, but nobody's ever seen this kind of stuff for dentistry. And so they're super excited about it. So as you are advancing, as you're releasing your new technology and your sprints, we got to stay up to speed. Otherwise, we'll get left behind in an instant.
Yeah, no, and I think those are excellent points to bring up because the technology side of this often intimidates practice owners of any size, and so I think it's important to remind everybody that the technology is here to be used as a tool, and it does require that you want to stay up to date. And because AI is everywhere, we are using AI in all facets of our business at Henry Schein One, and we are moving faster than we've ever moved on the product side and the engineering side, and new innovations are coming out every single day. And we were. I know one of our doctors was with you guys over the weekend, Dr. Ryan Hungate, our chief clinical officer, and he was talking about some of the things we're working on. And I'm at the Yankee Dental Conference today, and we're hearing things like how AI is changing the lives of dentistry, how it's giving them more time back in their day, how the AI notes products are helping, how the diagnostic is converting more treatment. So like they're starting to see the benefit on the real world personal level of how their lives are getting better through some of the use of these tools. And people are getting excited about dentistry again. I think that's one of my big takeaways of traveling around the offices and groups in the country is that people are excited to practice dentistry again. And so, because they're seeing, like you said, Kuzan, the attention that's coming into the dental world and some of the technology advances and how rapid they are. Um, Dr. Lilly, we talked earlier about FDA, and I promised you we'd come back to it. So let's talk a little bit about the FDA and what does it mean to be a diagnostic clear device, and kind of walk us through a little bit of what we're seeing on this slide, so that as our listeners start to look at these tools, they know what to look for, what to ask for, and what does all this mean? Because the FDA piece can get a little confusing, and so we want to make sure we give them the tools that they need so that they can make the right decision for their practices.
Sure. So when something's FDA cleared, it kind of has that stamp of approval, the federal stamp of approval for safety, accuracy, and reliability. And so we can say that this is confident that this AI model has been cleared for diagnosing these 11 cleared indications here. I don't want to read the entire slide to you, but you guys can kind of see it. And then also for historical treatment and for anatomical detections. What's also important here is that not only do we have that stamp of approval that this is like legit, this AI is accurate, but we also have that legal support saying that legal confidence that this has been cleared to help as a tool aid. It's not diagnosing, it's just a clinical finding of these things that are listed here. Another thing to consider, and I'm not sure if we talk about this later down the line, but is the importance of using an AI model that uses a diverse clinical data, and it also integrates real-world feedback loops. So the clinician can actually mark if they don't agree with that finding. And so we at Video Health will get that feedback, and then we're constantly evolving, constantly improving our models. So that's important to look for also when choosing an AI software.
I think that's one of the important aspects of AI in general, is that it is intelligence. And so whether you're using, an AI receptionist or AI diagnostic tool, an AI voice tool, it really does get smarter over time if they're training and using the data and responses back in the learning. So that is a very good point, because you want your AI to get smarter, you want it to get better. I first started working with AI tools in dentistry all the way back in 2019 in the early days, and I will tell you that it has gotten significantly faster and smarter in the dental space over time. The medical world's been using AI longer than us. I was reading a study at Kaiser Permanente that said after they implemented voice notes AI at the Kaiser medical facility, that their doctors reported an 85% increase in patient responses to patient care visits. So their reviews from the patients went up because the doctors were spending more time talking to the patients versus having their head in the keyboard. So little things like that can have a big impact on how the AI is impacting your organization. And understanding why the FDA pieces mean to that, it helps you be able to see. So you want to make sure you look for the ones that have the most caries, the most FDA clearances for AI detections, and that it covers the majority of like your business and your patient demographics for what you see in your office. So if you treat a lot of kids, you need to have one that's cleared for kids over 3. If you see a lot of patients with full mouth problems, make sure you've got some of the pieces for bone loss. Make sure they've got clearance for not just the basic parts of dentistry. So I think it's important to pick an FDA cleared product that's going to walk you through what also matches your patient demographics. Walk us through this example of bone level and perio detection. So how can this example help us understand this the results of the bone levels on this X-ray?
Sure. So bone level changes are really challenging for patients to visualize. We're talking about tiny differences in gray scale, and it's really challenging for us to point it out to a patient. But now with AI, we have these visual colors and we can easily show either moderate bone levels versus severe versus mild, things like that. And this is basically interpreting the centroenamel junction to the alveolar crest. So that is basically what it's measuring there. It kind of helps show the disease progression clearly for the patient so that we can compare what their x-rays are today compared to 6 months ago. And it kind of also helps support early intervention. Again, these subtle changes that the human eye may not be able to detect, AI model is able to notify us that, hey, something's going on, there's a red flag, take another look. So it also helps reinforce preventative care discussions, flossing, brushing, all of that above.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about taking those AI images, looking at the bone level, looking at, and go into kind of this chairside script example. And, being able to kind of have like a perio discussion with the patient. And so, using these tools to help patients understand, why we can treat this early before it worsens, using it to actually have the conversations like what you were just saying on the previous screen, where you showed the power of the AI analysis to start talking prevention and to show this slight subtle changes over time, and kind of how that actually impacts that chairside journey. Kuzan, do you hear much from your clinicians about the chairside experience with the AI and how they're using it in the offices today?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think there's some tangible benefits, and again, AI is a very broad term, right? We have operational AI, and they're making calls and doing RCM, and then we have the clinical AI. And so, from the clinical AI side of things, there's always the tangible and the intangible. I think, for again, I use voice peer as a really good example for me. We originally obviously put it in to benefit the hygienist, but as I mentioned earlier, we're seeing that the patient benefits too. It's not only saving the hygienist time, it's increasing the acceptance rate. And we're seeing that with video AI too. When it comes to or detect AI or the AI over the radiograph, when it comes to training, when it comes to mentoring, when it comes to having consistency across the board, I mean, those are all the benefits that we're seeing within you. So a lot of the points that we already touched upon.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, from the uh, early adopter perspective, some of the things that we hear from our practices after they start using diagnostic AI or voice AI, they're getting more consistent diagnosis across providers, just like you said. The hygienists feel empowered to flag concerns because now they've got bone loss measurements backing up their calculations from the hygiene and perio exams. It helps your assistants gain clarity and consistency as well. And then the doctors are spending more time, educating versus defending the diagnosis. And I think all of these things lead to that increased treatment acceptance, lead to better patient understanding, and I think really helping develop just that trust and relationship that you see between doctor and patient in the offices today. Um, let's talk a little bit about the acceleration of AI because we are living in a time of just super increasingly accelerating adoption of AI. And kind of looking at what that means and going through that sort of hype cycle. And in terms of the world of AI, I kind of joke that every time I go to a dental show, there's like 10 new AI companies. And so I think that it becomes increasingly important because it can get a little overwhelming to practices. And so my advice to practices is figure out what your biggest pain point is and then look for a product that will help you solve that. So if you're having trouble with treatment acceptance in your offices, then go with diagnostic AI to start. If your doctors are getting burnout, maybe look at a voice or hygienist, look at a voice, note taker or voice perio charting. If you're having trouble keeping appointments booked and filled, then look at potentially using an AI receptionist. So pick one of those to get started. And then figure out what outcomes you want, and then look at the adoption of those. Once you get into one and you start seeing it working, I think you'll see that you'll want to get more AI involved in your organization, and how it's also freeing you up to do more of the patient focused treatment and outcomes that you need in your group. And Dr. Lilly, I know you've been working with AI for a long time. What do you think about this acceleration that we've seen recently in dental AI?
Well, I feel like every technology has like a peak and a plateau, and that's just normal progression. But I feel like we're living in the golden age of dentistry. I mean, it's truly remarkable how leaps and bounds have we improved on. And I would have never imagined in my early days that I would have the second set of eyes. As an early clinician back in the day, it would have been so beneficial to just have someone else, just give me a second opinion, just be more confident. So it's really an amazing thing, and I really feel golden age of dentistry right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it gives us an opportunity as clinicians and people in the industry to be part of this wave. And we see that, like, this fact here, top 10% of early adopters of diagnostic AI, you end up with strong team alignment, consistency around patient education, and several of things that both Dr. Lilly and Kuzan have talked about on this call. And so being part of this golden age of dentistry, being part of these technology changes, and becoming a champion of AI diagnostic and the AI tools that are available to dental offices today, the sooner I think we get on the bandwagon as an industry, the advances just continue by leaps and bounds. And so I definitely encourage folks to, like I said, pick a partner, start looking into the AI diagnostic tools that are available, and figure out those workflows that could definitely benefit from that.
Really quickly, if I can jump
Yeah.
in, April, the one thing I want to add there, um, at least for us, right? And this is absolutely critical. And we've kind of touched upon this earlier on in the conversation is when you're looking at a partner, um, again, there is a saturation of AI vendors right now in the market. Everybody's got a product coming. And so it's really, really important that you make sure that all of your tools are playing well within your ecosystem. Because if they don't, it can be extremely, it can have the exact opposite effect. It will be very counterproductive. And so again, for us, I've used this term before and I get made fun of it a lot, but single pane of glass, right? And so it's very, very important. Like when we deal with Henry Schein One, we like to play around with the vendors that are already integrated, that have access to the API. It helps us out not only from, again, from the clinical standpoint, but reporting and getting access to that data. It's one big happy family. I cannot stress that enough. I know I'm giving you more of the technological side, but I just want to stress that because we live and breathe it every day, and we've been burnt by it, right? When we try to go outside, and oh, it's a cool snazzy AI vendor, but they don't play well with all of the other tools and all of the other functions within the EMR's ecosystem, it can be disastrous.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think that's probably one of the things I hear the most when someone's had a bad experience with an AI vendor or an AI choice. And oftentimes it was because they weren't fully integrated or embedded into the practice management system, or they didn't have the right security protocols in place, and it ended up being, a bigger challenge for the team and systems and processes that are in the organization. And so I think going from that early adopter mentality to sort of becoming a super user of AI and diagnostic AI, there's some things that happen there a little differently. And so that's a little bit about what we're talking about here is, you get multiple team members involved, you have stronger collaborations, good communications, but we do see these things kind of foster themselves in that environment where your AI tools are part of your embedded clinical workflows as much as possible, or at least fully connected into your ecosystem, because as Kuzan said, and rightly so, those can cause more trouble oftentimes than is expected from the technology perspective. And then that's also going to frustrate the team and have them struggle with adoption and utilization if it's not easy to use, if it's not, that single pane of glass embedded type of clinical workflow that you want, in terms of making it easy, because these tools are designed to make your clinical processes more efficient, and to help you educate your team and patients. And so you need them to work in a seamless, clear, and easy way. So I absolutely agree that that is a great point that you want to look into even more when you're choosing the right one. The other piece that we should talk about is, making time to learn the AI. So leverage the training that's available through your partners. Practices that adopt AI thoughtfully are more attractive to patients and staff. It helps to make sure that the team is continuously training, as Kuzan mentioned earlier in the call tonight. That these things are changing. There are new advances coming out often. And so, kind of elevating your standard of care, your team productivity, make sure you're driving those measurable outcomes, and that it's not just the AI, but it becomes sort of your virtual, assistant for modern dentistry. And using these diagnostic AI tools can do that, but to also, continually train and look into that. Um, we're going to do a little bit of myth busting as we get close to the end of our time. And so, Dr. Lilly, I'd like you to talk about the common myth of how AI replaces the dentist. I hear this at times, and so I'd like to get your sense and take on this.
Sure. So I've said it before, sure, an AI can notice subtle differences in grayscale much more than a human eye. However, they can also notice that change and then have a false positive. So the clinician's job is to have that context, the patient's symptoms, the clinical exam, the history, the progression over time. All of these things play a part into determining, if it is truly a cavity or if it can just be watched or monitored or if it's just an artifact. It's definitely not replacing the dentist. It's just another tool in our tool belt. And again, we have to use our own human intelligence alongside the artificial intelligence for best patient care and outcomes.
Exactly. And the other thing is that the other myth that we were going to talk about with you guys is how AI oversells treatment. So Kuzan, talk a little bit about what's true about that myth and what the myth buster is.
Well, I don't think it oversells. In fact, so at GLDP, we have something called the DAB and something called the HAB, which is the Doctor Advisory Board and the Hygiene Advisory Board. And they're the ones really ultimately at the end of the day, to Dr. Lilly's point, that decide what clinical care looks like at GLDP. And so at least within our Detect AI tool, we have thresholds. It can be extremely liberal in its diagnosis or extremely conservative in its diagnosis. And the doctor advisory board and the hygiene advisory board can set that threshold for the entire organization at large. But at the end of the day, it's ultimately the doctor that, I mean, just to the earlier point, that's making the decisions. This is not a Tesla autopilot. It is not taking over and driving for you at all, right? It is there to be an aid. It is another tool in the toolkit. And it's the doctors and the hygienists that are making the decisions at the end of the day. So oversells, undersells, I don't think that applies at all when it comes to AI. And if I may kind of bleed into the next one, I don't even think patients care whether AI is there or not. I think patients care that they're not fooled. I think people get annoyed when you are presenting an audio agent to be a real person and it's not. I think patients at the end of the day, when they come to see a dentist, they're concerned about their health. They don't want to feel pain. They want to have a pleasurable experience. Whether that's through AI or not, that I think is irrelevant, right? They want a pleasant, good, successful, healthy experience.
No, I absolutely agree. And I think that, the piece about the patients not wanting I don't know that it's so much that they don't want AI, but the patients want to clearly understand the images that you're showing them. They want to understand why they need the treatment. And I think it just becomes part of that tool when you have those clearer visuals and explanations, that it just makes it easier for the patients to say yes, and gives the patients a greater comfort level of what you're seeing. So Mythbusters is one of my favorite parts of these. So thank you guys for playing that. And a couple of final pieces about implementing diagnostic AI. We have definitely seen in our case studies how it boosts profitability. It helps deliver better patient outcomes, elevates patient care, helps with your treatment conversions, helps with your patient education. And so I think those things are important pieces to get out as we close here and look at how it can actually, boost your profitability. Ask questions, learn, get your team involved, evaluate AI through clinical, not emotional lens. I think that's also important. Dr. Lilly has talked about how it becomes a second set of eyes for your clinical team. Kuzan has talked about how it helps to manage the technology and change management side, and that it's a continuous motion. And I'd really just, like to thank all of our panelists and guests tonight. You guys have done an amazing job, and helped elevate this discussion. I love talking about AI. I love talking about embedded clinical digital workflows and helping our customers in and out of Henry Schein One choose the right tools for their diagnostic AI, for their voice clinical AI, their perio charting. And we're doing our best over here at Henry Schein One to kind of build a platform that supports dentistry of today and dentistry of the future. So if our moderator wants to jump in here, that would be great.
So there's a question in the chat. Why does it have to have two different colors when measuring bone loss? What's the difference between yellow and green?
Dr. Lilly, you want to take that one?
Sure. So we on our website we have a very thorough definition and description, but I'll give you the quick analysis of it. Green means go. Yellow means watch out, slow down. Green is like within normal limits, and yellow is like mild bone loss, kind of an early detection kind of thing.
No, that makes perfect sense. Thank you. What's next?
Curious, how your docs respond to AI flagging issues in some of their treatment plans from the dental directors?
Ooh, Dr. Kuzan, that sounds like a good one for you. How do your doctors respond when issues get flagged by your dental directors?
Sorry, do you want me to, did you want me to
Yeah,
take
go
that
ahead.
one?
Take that one.
Yeah, sorry. I guess I'm confused. When you say dental directors, what could you expand on that? Maybe I didn't quite follow what the question was.
I'll read the question again.
Yeah.
How do your docs respond to AI flagging issues in some of their treatment plans from the dental directors? Perhaps maybe they have a treatment plan coordinator or doctor that's overseeing what the doctors are treatment planning, perhaps. Maybe that's what they're referring to.
I mean, again, and I think we've talked about this quite a bit. Ultimately, the AI is making suggestions, right? It is not the one that is deciding the treatment plan. I think the doctors have the ultimate say. It's more about guidance. It's more about suggestions. It's more about bridging that to the earlier point. Why are things highlighted in the way they are? It's about bridging the gap between the doctor and the patient that's sitting in the chair. So when the doctor kind of motions over the radiograph, they're not just pointing at areas that the patient doesn't know because they haven't gone to medical school for 6 years or whatever the case is, right? It's bringing up these spots, but those are just suggestions. I mean, the treatment plans are just suggestions. The doctor makes the decisions, and so there is no conflict in our doctors' minds. If they see something that they disagree with, then they don't do it. It's as simple as that. But the idea being that it still provides that consistency across the board, at least for all of our clinics at GLDP. I guess the point is the doctors have the final say.
How does the
We're hiring doctors out of college, not AI bots, right? We haven't gone full agentic AI just yet.
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
How does the FDA evaluate the model efficacy?
Dr. Lilly, that sounds like a good question for you.
Oh, this is a long answer that we don't have time for today. It's quite a process. It's a review board. It takes months on end. We have ground truthers, and yeah, it's a very rigorous process. It's all outlined on our website. If you want to check it out, or if you want to email me, I can type it all up for you.
It does involve clinical studies and trials, reviewing thousands of images across the country in different demographic and socioeconomic settings. So there's a lot that goes into getting FDA clearances. And Vidya, one of our partners, they have some of the most out of any of the FDA cleared diagnostic companies in the world. So she's an expert in this field. So feel free to reach out to her to ask more questions on that.
Does the angulation of the X-ray affect the AI readings?
So we take that into account when we have the readings for the radiographic bone levels. It's taken into account. So, but great question.
One thing I will add, though, the one thing that we have seen where AI is helpful is, again, like I mentioned, there's clinical AI and there's operational AI. We are seeing the emergence of, on the operational side, on the RCM side, AI tools that will at least flag when X-rays, when radiographs are not taken properly. And this is more downstream for claim submission. And the big call out here is the one thing that we've noticed that our patients hate more than anything else is when they leave and they think they've had a successful visit and they get a call like, hey, by the way, sorry, the X-ray that you took, we need you to come back and take it again. I don't want to repeat some of the vulgar profanities that I've heard on the other side of the phone when we're recording these conversations, but they're extreme. And this is the point, right? It's about a pleasurable experience. And so being able to catch that instantly when they're sitting in the chair and be like, actually, you know what? Let me take another thing because it's being flagged. You're going through, you're trying to go as quickly as possible, but these kinds of things, it's the little things that make a huge difference.
What is the accuracy of the parle detection? Does it ever mistake the mental foramen for a lesion?
So again, it's just a tool in our tool belt. It's just a machine. It doesn't replace a human. So unfortunately, false positives do occur. And again, that's why the dentist ultimately is the one who's making that diagnosis and doing that root canal and doing those clinical exams and clinical testing. So yeah, unfortunately it does happen.
What is the voice notes that integrates with Dentrix and NVIDIA?
So there is a couple of voice notes products that do integrate that are part of our ecosystem, and Dentrix and Ascend also both have a brand new native voice notes AI product. It is already live in Ascend called Voice Notes with AI, and it goes live in Dentrix at the end of February. And those are available for people to demo and sign up for now. It actually will allow you to dictate the note into the chart directly, or it does ambient listening and then will create the note from listening to your exam. So these are great new AI features. We are doing our part to embed those into the dental practice management systems for Dentrix and Dentrix Ascend, so that they're just part of your workflow. And so we announced at the end of the year that we had partnered with the folks at Amazon and AWS, and we're using their agentic AI technology to build that. So it's some of the most advanced learning language models and AI technology that you can have in the voice world, and we are bringing it to the dental industry. And so it's part of the hands-free clinical workflow that we're trying to deliver to our customers this year. And so you can use the voice notes in connection with your AI imaging. And everything is in one workflow inside the PMS. And even the piece that Kuzan mentioned a moment ago about the image quality review, we are doing that now inside of Ascend and Dentrix in real time, so that you can take an x-ray. It tells you if it's good enough for diagnostic purposes and for your claims. And if not, we tell the assistant or the hygienist or the dentist in the moment to retake it, so that they know to get a good quality image on file. Having bad images or incorrect images is one of the highest reasons that claims get denied in the US today. And so we're hoping to kind of attack that problem and help your RCM early on. But there are great AI tools that are available now in both of these platforms, and feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to tell you more about it and some of the great work that we're doing on the AI side outside of Detect AI and our diagnostic AI.
Thank you. I think that concludes all the questions this evening.